Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into some fascinating source texts today that are honestly going to completely reframe how we think ancient biblical figures communicated with the divine. So let's look at this history together through a totally new lens.
Okay, let's dive into this. When you hear the word prayer, you probably picture, something quiet, reverent, and polite. Maybe a sort of passive submission, right? But when we actually look closely at the source texts of the Old Testament, the reality is shocking. It's raw, and it is anything but polite.
As you can see, these ancient texts present prayer not as a passive recitation, but as a dynamic, confrontational dialogue. These aren't just quiet meditations. We're talking about intense, high-stakes human interactions. These figures didn't just bow down. They argued, they negotiated, they fought. They laid absolutely everything on the line. To see this evolution, we're going to follow a clear structure for this explainer. First, we'll look at the foundation of dialogue with God. Second, Abraham haggles. Third, Jacob wrestles in the night. Fourth, the Song of the Reed Sea. And finally, Moses pleads for the people.
So let's kick things off with Section 1, Dialogue with God, the foundation of interaction.
And that sets the stage for Section 2, Abraham haggles with God, testing divine justice.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how it captures the dynamic. In our sources, God often actually initiates these interactions, treating humans almost like partners in an inner circle. So when God reveals his plan to investigate the wickedness of Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham doesn't just quietly nod. Notice his visual intensity here. He is looking right up, bold and daring. He literally has the audacity to haggle with the Creator, like a merchant in a marketplace, asking, will you really sweep away the righteous with the wicked? He's holding God accountable to his own nature.
And then begins one of the most remarkable countdowns in all of literature. Abraham systematically tests God's justice. He starts by asking if God will spare the city for 50 righteous people. When God agrees, he drops to 45, then 40, 30, 20, and he finally stops at 10. With every step down this numerical ladder, Abraham isn't just trying to save a city, He is discovering the immense, unfathomable patience and mercy of God.
Our source material brings in a fascinating modern parallel here from psychologist John Gottman's work on marriage communication. Think about it. In a destructive argument, people tend to focus on the negative, right? The panic or the perceived disrespect. But successful communication relies on a positive mechanism, finding the underlying truth in what the other person is actually trying to say. When Abraham was frantically questioning God, God didn't strike him down for insolence. Instead, God heard the positive mechanism in Abraham's panic, this desperate need to know that the God he served was truly just.
Let's move on and see how this builds in Section 3. Jacob wrestles in the night, victory through vulnerability. We turn now to a much darker, urgent encounter with Abraham's grandson Jacob at the river Jabbok. Terrified of facing his estranged brother, Jacob is alone at night when an unknown assailant suddenly attacks him. Imagine the sheer terror and exhaustion here. He is locked in a grueling, intimate physical struggle all night long with this divine messenger, which ends with the stranger striking Jacob's hip and permanently dislocating it. And this brilliantly illustrates the dual nature of the fight. On one side, you have physical combat. This is Jacob fighting for control exactly like he had fought and manipulated his way through his entire life. But when his hip is shattered, he realizes he is completely helpless. The physical combat transforms into spiritual dependence. He literally clings to his opponent and cries out, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Jacob finally wins, but he wins not by force. He wins by realizing his absolute vulnerability and dependence on God.
All right, shifting gears a bit. Section 4, Song of the Reed Sea, celebrating deliverance.
The narrative pacing feels so expansive here, shifting to daylight and absolute triumph. As Moses raises his staff over the chaotic waters, our sources actually highlight a really fascinating scholarly debate. The original Hebrew texts say Yam Suf, which translates to the Reed Sea. So rather than the Red Sea, it was likely the shallow, marshy Lake Balah. And this geographical detail makes the strategic entrapment of those heavy Egyptian chariots all the more historically fascinating, doesn't it? But hey, regardless of the exact geography, the deliverance was absolutely monumental.
Following this miraculous escape, the people prayed in song, but they did so in two very different ways. Our source beautifully contrasts these leadership styles. Miriam, Moses' sister, leads the women with a populist song. It's short, it's accessible, accompanied by tambourines, and driven by joyful dancing. It focuses entirely on the immediate, tangible victory. On the other hand, Moses delivers an elite epic. His song is long, complex, highly prophetic, and theological. So you see, Miriam brought the celebration to the people in a relatable way they could easily repeat, while Moses focused on the grand cosmic theology of the event. But both were absolutely essential forms of communal prayer.
Which brings us to our final high-stakes moment. Section 5. Moses pleads for the people, the ultimate intercession.
Let's slow the pace down for this one. Fast forward a bit. The Israelites have just committed the ultimate betrayal by worshiping the golden calf, and God's wrath threatens to destroy them entirely and just start over. But Moses stands solitary and majestic in the breach. Rather than accepting an offer for his own personal greatness, he takes on this solitary burden. He begs God to turn away from his anger, actually arguing with God by reminding him of his own promises to their ancestors.
So the crucial point is right here. Moses returns to God and delivers this staggering ultimatum. If you will forgive their sin, but if not, please blot me out of your book which you have written. Just let that sink in for a second. He is literally putting his own eternal soul on the line, forgetting his own legacy out of love for a rebellious people. And in doing so, he perfectly reflected the merciful, self-sacrificing heart of God himself.
From Abraham haggling, to Jacob wrestling, to Miriam dancing, and Moses offering his own soul, these ancient prayers were never passive. They were gritty, real, and profoundly human. Which brings me to a question for you as we wrap up this explainer. Knowing that this level of raw, unfiltered honesty is how these ancient figures connected with the divine, how do you engage in life's greatest struggles and dialogues? Are you politely standing on the sidelines, or are you ready to wrestle in the dark? Thank you so much for joining me today, and I really hope this leaves you eager to explore these incredible historical texts even further.